Do not set up any wooden Asherah pole beside the altar you build to the Lord your God. This command from Deuteronomy 16 verse 21 sets the stage for our exploration into one of the most intriguing and often overlooked figures in ancient West Semitic religion, the goddess Asherah. Welcome to Celestial Chronicles, where we delve deep into the mysteries of ancient myths and the divine. Today, we uncover the story of Asherah, her symbols, her worship, and her contentious presence in biblical texts. Join us on this journey through ancient history. If you enjoy these deep dives into mythology and religion, subscribe to our channel and become a part of our growing community. Let's begin our exploration. Asherah, the major goddess of West Semitic religions. Asherah was a prominent deity in the pantheon of the ancient West Semitic peoples, venerated across the Fertile Crescent, particularly in Canaan. Known by various epithets such as Lady of the Sea and Mother of Gods, Asherah was primarily associated with fertility, motherhood, and the nurturing aspects of life. She was often depicted as a consort to the chief god El and later to Baal, symbolizing her central role in the divine hierarchy. In what ways do ancient myths shape our understanding of the divine feminine? Discuss in the chat below. Asherah's imagery and symbols. Asherah's representation in the realm of ancient art and artifacts is diverse and abundant. She is often depicted through various symbols, most notably trees and wooden poles, which are frequently referred to as Asherah poles. These symbols are not chosen at random, but rather, they carry profound meanings. Trees, for instance, are seen as symbols of life and fertility, mirroring Asherah's role as a life-giving deity. Fertility symbols and their significance. In addition to trees and poles, Asherah is also associated with other fertility symbols. These symbols underscore her role as a mother goddess, a divine figure believed to grant fertility and oversee childbirth. The emphasis on fertility symbols in her imagery highlights the importance of life and procreation in the societies that worshipped her. Archaeological discoveries and their implications. Archaeologists have unearthed numerous figurines believed to represent Asherah. Many of these figurines possess exaggerated feminine features, further reinforcing her association with fertility and motherhood. The discovery of these figurines in household shrines suggests that Asherah was not just worshipped in grand temples, but also held a significant place in everyday religious practices. This indicates her importance in the daily lives of the people who venerated her. Symbols in ancient art hinting at forgotten deities. Throughout history, many deities have been forgotten, their names and stories lost to time. However, their presence can still be felt through the symbols they left behind in ancient art. These symbols serve as silent reminders of their once prominent place in people's lives and beliefs. Judean pillar figures, a testament to Asherah's worship. Among the most notable artifacts associated with Asherah are the Judean pillar figures. These statuettes, commonly found throughout ancient Israel, often feature a prominent torso and a simple column-like base. Scholars believe these figures represent Asherah. Their widespread presence across the region attests to the extensive worship of Asherah. Moreover, the intimate, personal nature of these figures suggests that Asherah's veneration was not just a public practice, but also a deeply personal one. The rich and varied imagery associated with Asherah provides us with valuable insights into the religious practices and beliefs of ancient societies. It paints a picture of a deity who was deeply revered and whose influence permeated every aspect of people's lives. Even today, these symbols and artifacts continue to fascinate scholars and history enthusiasts alike, offering a glimpse into a past that is both intriguing and mysterious. Asherah in the Bible. The Bible mentions Asherah approximately 40 times, often using terms like grove or sacred tree to translate her name. These references are generally negative, depicting the worship of Asherah as a practice that must be eradicated to ensure exclusive worship of Yahweh. Despite this negative portrayal, the frequent mentions of Asherah indicate her significant presence in the religious practices of ancient Israel. Asherah was often associated with high places, which were elevated sites used for worship. These high places typically included altars and sacred trees or poles dedicated to Asherah. The Bible recounts numerous efforts by reformist kings, such as Hezekiah and Josiah, to remove these high places and centralize worship in the Jerusalem temple. This centralization was part of a broader effort to establish a more uniform worship of Yahweh, highlighting the ongoing tension between official religious policies and popular religious practices. The persistent mentions of Asherah in the Bible reflect the complex religious dynamics of ancient Israel. While the official stance was to eliminate her worship, the recurring references and the archaeological evidence of Asherah's symbols and worship sites suggest that many Israelites continued to venerate her alongside Yahweh. This duality illustrates the tension between the monotheistic reforms of the ruling class and the polytheistic traditions that were deeply ingrained in the daily lives of the people. Archaeological discoveries, such as figurines and inscriptions, provide tangible evidence of Asherah's worship. Sites like Kuntalat Ajrud and Khirbet el-Kham have revealed artifacts that mention Asherah alongside Yahweh, suggesting a more inclusive religious practice in ancient Israel than the Bible's monotheistic narrative implies. These findings show that Asherah was a significant deity in household and local shrines, emphasizing her role in personal and communal worship. The persistence of Asherah's worship, despite the efforts of reformist kings, indicates that her veneration was deeply rooted in the cultural and religious fabric of ancient Israelite society. Women, in particular, played a crucial role in her worship, as evidenced by biblical texts mentioning women baking cakes for the Queen of Heaven, a title associated with Asherah. This gendered aspect of her worship highlights the significant role of women in maintaining and transmitting religious traditions. The portrayal of Asherah in the Bible, therefore, not only reflects the religious reforms and conflicts of ancient Israel but also provides insight into the everyday religious practices of its people. It underscores the complexity of ancient Israelite religion, where official monotheism coexisted with popular polytheistic traditions. This dynamic interplay between different religious practices and beliefs paints a richer and more nuanced picture of the spiritual life in ancient Israel. Historical context of worship. The worship of Asherah persisted throughout the First Temple period, even though religious reformers tried to eliminate it. This persistence indicates that Asherah held a significant place in the hearts of the people, especially among women who were deeply involved in her rituals. For example, the book of Jeremiah mentions women baking cakes for the Queen of Heaven. Many scholars believe this title refers to Asherah, showing her importance in daily religious practices. Religious life of ancient Israel. The continued worship of Asherah gives us valuable insights into the religious life of ancient Israel. It suggests that the people's beliefs were not entirely aligned with the official religious policies enforced by the authorities. Instead, there was a rich, diverse spiritual life that included the veneration of various deities. Asherah's role as a goddess associated with fertility, motherhood, and domestic life made her particularly important to women. This deep-rooted worship indicates that family and reproductive aspects were central to the everyday religious practices of the Israelites. Comparisons with other cultures. Comparing Asherah to deities from other cultures reveals fascinating similarities. For instance, in the Greek pantheon, Hera is the goddess of marriage and childbirth, much like Asherah. Both goddesses were connected to familial and reproductive aspects of life. These comparisons highlight how ancient religions across different cultures often focused on universal themes such as fertility, motherhood, and the well-being of the family. In many cultures, goddesses like Asherah and Hera were revered as protectors of the home and family. This commonality suggests that these themes were essential to the people's daily lives, reflecting their hopes, fears, and values. The worship of such goddesses provided comfort and a sense of security, especially in times of uncertainty. Philosophical critique of mythology. When we look at the realm of philosophy, we find that thinkers like Plato offered critical perspectives on mythology. Plato famously rejected the immoral portrayals of gods in traditional myths. He argued that such stories could corrupt society's moral fabric. In his ideal state, myths would be cleansed of these damaging elements and would only reflect virtuous and noble characteristics. Plato believed that myths had a powerful influence on people's beliefs and behaviors, and therefore, they should promote good values. Influence of ancient myths on modern ethics and morals. Ancient myths continue to have a significant impact on modern ethical and moral beliefs. These stories, though ancient, carry themes and symbols that still resonate with us today. They shape our understanding of the divine and provide moral lessons that have been passed down through generations. For example, myths often depict the struggles between good and evil, justice and injustice, and the consequences of human actions. These themes are universal and timeless, influencing how we think about right and wrong in today's world. Plato's critique and its enduring impact. Plato's critique highlights the lasting influence of ancient myths on contemporary culture. He believed that the stories told about gods and heroes could shape the values and behaviors of society. If these stories portrayed the gods as immoral or deceitful, they could lead people to adopt similar behaviors. Therefore, Plato advocated for myths that depicted gods and heroes as virtuous and noble, setting a positive example for society to follow. The legacy of Asherah. The story of Asherah offers a fascinating glimpse into the religious life of ancient West Semitic peoples. Asherah was a goddess whose symbols, worship, and contentious presence in biblical texts paint a complex picture. She was both revered and reviled, illustrating the multifaceted nature of ancient deities. Her worship included various rituals and symbols that were integral to the religious practices of the time. Asherah's legacy provides us with deeper insights into the ancient world. By studying her story, we can understand the values and beliefs of the people who worshipped her. This, in turn, helps us see how ancient religious practices have influenced modern ones. The themes found in the stories of Asherah and other ancient deities continue to resonate today, shaping our understanding of the divine and providing moral lessons that are still relevant. The duality of Asherah's worship. The worship of Asherah presents a duality that is both intriguing and reflective of the broader dynamics of ancient religions. On one hand, she was a nurturing mother goddess, integral to household worship and daily life. On the other, her worship was frequently condemned by the biblical authors, highlighting the tension between popular and official religious practices. How does this duality reflect the broader religious and social conflicts of the time? Discuss below. Archaeological evidence and its implications. Archaeological findings give us real, physical proof of Asherah's worship and help us understand the religious practices of ancient communities. For example, excavations at places like Kuntalat Ajrud and Khirbet el-Kham have unearthed inscriptions and artifacts that mention Asherah together with Yahweh. These discoveries suggest that the ancient Israelite religion might have been more complex and inclusive than the strictly monotheistic belief system described in the Bible. At Kuntalat Ajrud, inscriptions found on pottery fragments refer to Yahweh and his Asherah, indicating that Asherah was seen as a companion or consort to Yahweh. This challenges the traditional view of ancient Israelite religion as solely focused on a single male deity. Similarly, at Khirbet el-Kham, inscriptions on tombs also reference Asherah alongside Yahweh, further supporting the idea that worship practices included reverence for multiple deities. These findings paint a picture of a society where religious beliefs were diverse and evolving. The presence of Asherah in these inscriptions suggests that the worship of female deities was more accepted and integrated into religious practices than previously thought. This also indicates that ancient Israelite religion might have included elements of polytheism or at least henotheism, where one god is supreme but others are also worshipped. Comparative mythology, Asherah and other fertility goddesses. By comparing Asherah with other fertility goddesses from different cultures, we can better understand the universal themes of motherhood and fertility in ancient religions. Goddesses like Isis in Egypt, Ishtar in Mesopotamia, and Demeter in Greece all share attributes with Asherah, emphasizing the widespread reverence for the divine feminine. In Egypt, Isis was not only a fertility goddess but also the goddess of magic, motherhood, and rebirth. She was worshipped as the ideal mother and wife and was believed to have great magical powers to heal the sick and protect the dead. Her nurturing and protective qualities made her one of the most important deities in Egyptian mythology. In Mesopotamia, Ishtar, also known as Inanna in Sumerian mythology, was the goddess of love, beauty, sex, fertility, and war. Her dual role as both a nurturer and a warrior made her a complex and powerful figure. She was celebrated for her strength and independence, often depicted in myths as a figure who could descend to the underworld and return, symbolizing the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. In Greek mythology, Demeter was the goddess of the harvest and fertility. She was responsible for the growth of crops and the fertility of the earth. The myth of Demeter and her daughter Persephone, who was abducted by Hades to the underworld, explains the changing seasons and highlights the deep connection between motherhood and the earth's fertility cycles. Other cultures also had central fertility goddesses. For example, in ancient Canaanite religion, Asherah was revered as a mother goddess associated with fertility and the sea. She was often depicted as a nurturing figure and was sometimes called the Queen of Heaven. In Hindu mythology, the goddess Parvati is a central figure representing fertility, love, and devotion. She is the wife of Shiva and the mother of Ganesha and Kartikeya. Parvati's role as a nurturing and protective mother is celebrated in numerous stories and festivals. In Norse mythology, Freya was the goddess of love, fertility, and beauty. She was also associated with war and death, similar to Ishtar. Freya's dual aspects highlight the complex nature of fertility goddesses, who are often connected to both creation and destruction. By exploring these diverse representations of fertility goddesses, we see common themes of nurturing, protection, and the cycle of life and death. These goddesses were central to their culture's religious practices and reflected the universal human experience of reverence for the divine feminine and the mysteries of life and creation. Can you think of other cultures where fertility goddesses play a central role? Let's explore together. Women's roles in ancient religious practices. Women had very important roles in ancient religious practices, especially in the worship of the goddess Asherah. Both biblical texts and archaeological findings show that women were actively involved in these rituals. For example, women baked cakes as offerings for Asherah, who was often referred to as the Queen of Heaven. These rituals highlight how religious practices were often gender-specific, with women playing key roles in certain ceremonies and traditions. Understanding these roles is crucial because it gives us a clearer picture of ancient societies and how they operated. It also sheds light on the spiritual lives of women at that time, showing that they were not just passive participants but active contributors to their religious communities. When we compare these ancient practices to modern religions, we see both similarities and differences. In many modern religions, women continue to play significant roles, though the extent and nature of their involvement can vary widely. Some modern religious traditions allow women to be leaders, such as priests, ministers, or rabbis, while others may restrict these roles to men. Additionally, women in many modern religions participate in various religious activities, teach religious education, and engage in community service. By looking at the roles of women in both ancient and modern religious practices, we can see how their contributions have evolved over time. This comparison helps us appreciate the diverse ways in which women have shaped and continue to shape religious life throughout history. The evolution of Asherah's image. The image of Asherah changed a lot over time because of different cultural and religious changes. At first, Asherah was a major goddess, worshipped widely and considered very important. However, as monotheism, or the belief in one god, became more popular in Israel, her status began to decline. religious leaders and texts started to downplay her significance, portraying her as less important than she once was. Despite this, Asherah's presence didn't completely disappear. She continued to be an important figure in folk religion and household worship. Many families still prayed to her and kept her symbols in their homes. This shows that she had a lasting impact on people's spiritual lives, even if official religious practices no longer emphasized her role. Several factors contributed to the changing perception of Asherah. One major factor was the rise of monotheism, which focused worship on a single god, reducing the importance of other deities. Political and religious leaders also played a role by promoting this shift in belief and practice. Additionally, the influence of neighboring cultures and their religious practices affected how Asherah was viewed and worshipped. Overall, the evolution of Asherah's image reflects the dynamic nature of religious beliefs and how they adapt to changing social and cultural contexts. Her enduring presence in everyday religious practices highlights her significant impact on the spiritual landscape, despite efforts to minimize her role. Philosophical reflections on mythology. Philosophers like Plato criticized traditional myths because they often depicted gods with human flaws and immoral behavior. Plato believed that these stories could negatively influence people's moral and ethical beliefs by showing gods acting in ways that were not admirable. This critique invites us to think deeply about the role of mythology in our society. What kind of impact do these stories have on our values and behavior? By looking at the views of philosophers like Plato, we can understand the complicated relationship between myth, religion, and philosophy. Myths are more than just stories, they shape our understanding of the world and influence our actions. Some people might agree with Plato and think myths should show gods and heroes as perfect and morally upright, to set a good example. Others might believe that showing gods with human flaws makes them more relatable and teaches us about the complexity of life. Do you agree with Plato's view on mythology? How do you think myths should be portrayed? Should they inspire us by showing perfection, or teach us about reality by showing imperfection? Join the conversation and share your thoughts. The legacy of Asherah in modern culture. Even though she comes from ancient times, Asherah's story still has a big impact on today's world. People are interested in her, from scholars who study old myths to the general public who enjoy stories about gods and goddesses in movies, books, and TV shows. The tale of Asherah connects with people now because it highlights a continuing fascination with ancient legends and the concept of the divine feminine, which represents the female aspect of spirituality. Looking at how Asherah's legacy lives on helps us understand how old beliefs influence our modern views. For example, ancient myths often show up in our stories, art, and even in the way we think about gender and power. They remind us of the past and shape how we see the world today. We can see the influence of ancient myths in many areas of our culture. In movies, characters inspired by old gods and goddesses often appear as powerful heroes or mysterious figures. Books and TV shows also draw from these stories, bringing ancient themes into modern plots. Even in our everyday lives, the symbols and ideas from ancient myths can influence our thoughts and actions. By exploring Asherah's legacy, we can learn more about the lasting power of ancient myths and how they continue to shape our culture. It shows us that even the oldest stories can still be relevant and meaningful today. Let's dive into this topic and see how the myths of the past live on in the present. The enduring mystery of Asherah. As we conclude our exploration of Asherah, we are left with a deeper understanding of her significance and the complex dynamics of ancient religion. Her story is a testament to the enduring power of mythology and its ability to capture the imagination of generations. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Subscribe to Celestial Chronicles for more fascinating explorations of the past, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Keep seeking the stars.